things right now. So there's four big features coming. The the complete world. So this is the world we wanted to build at the beginning. Um, the tactical camera. This is to be the dark horse feature of this update. It's the least
Yep.
flashy, but in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people on the team, this is going to change the game, right?
Hmm.
The uniforms. So everyone's been expecting this. I've dropped hints, which I probably shouldn't have, which Matt was giving me a hard time about yesterday. um, but uniforms are finally here, and we're going to talk about how we're going to incorporate them into the game. And finally, the building update coming back around to some of the stuff we didn't finish for trench warfare. So let's start with the world, complete world. So a little, again, a little bit of a history lesson here on Foxhole's development. When we started the game, we had less than 50 people in the world, and this was during the pre-alpha phase. Nobody knew about the game, and we had to scream and shout to even get 50 people into a war. We started building out the Deadlands, which was the first region, and that's where we started. Eventually, at first it was just a part of a map, a part of a region. Eventually, we built it out to a whole region. From there, we started adding more regions onto that, and we were trying to. At the time, the wars weren't even really like wars now. They were actually uh, more like matches set in a region because we
Yeah.
didn't have the
Hmm.
tech or the gameplay or the content in place to actually have a persistent war that would last for weeks. So we created this mode. It was the campaign mode, and it was just our way of trying to reach at the final goal without having the tools yet. So in campaign mode, you would actually fight on each region, and as you win them, it became sort of like a winning a region in like a grand strategy game. But what we really want was to put all the regions together into the same war, so that you're fighting them at the same time. And we did that in World Conquest mode, which we added shortly after launching into early access, and it was a really bumpy ride when we first put all the regions together. Traveling at the border was not a great experience, and there was just there wasn't even a queuing system at some point. So it was a really painful experience, but it got the job done at the time. And since then, uh, well, rather, when we got to that point, um, we got it working decently in update. By update 20, World Conquest was starting to feel a little bit like what it's like now. But one of the big things that players would always bring up is that the pieces of the world didn't quite fit together. Because Matt, maybe you talk about this for a second, but we built them separately, right?
Yeah, they were each built like as individual maps. They were there was the thought that they would come together, but at the time the mandate that was sort of just like make the map separate. Like don't worry about if it's a different size. So all the maps you see here, there were different like dimensions and everything. So like there's no way that they could. We had to come up with this whole system of like sort of uh averaging out coordinates so that people would end up on a place that made sense on their other map, and so it was like a whole nightmare. So we were like, we need to fix this. We need to do something that makes more sense.
That's right. And actually, this picture on the right is actually from a Reddit post from a player trying to map out where all the connection points were. Um, so eventually, in the War Machine update, we turned the regions into hexes because we wanted them to fit together nicely. And I think at that point we were reasonably satisfied. This was large enough for us to get our goals across, but we always felt like it needed one more step, right? And that's the step we're taking now. So we're expanding the world into the north and the south. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Um, the main reasons is that we feel like in order to execute on the full scale of the type of war that we want to see, we just need more room, right? So we want the front line to be able to move more forward and back. We want people there to be more interesting things that can happen to the front, because we feel like right now, um, when the front line moves a little bit, it already feels like the war is almost over. But we want there to be more room, so you can be pushed back a bit more. The shape of the front line can change, and then maybe you can push back, right? And another big reason for this is we want to be able to have many more different types of starting conditions, which wasn't as possible with the current world, because this world can go more or less in any direction, right?
Yeah.
So we can go north south, we can go east west, and there
This
are some
was
lower constraints. Yep.
this was the original plan. I just want to bring that up. When we originally started exploring what a hex world could look like, this was the size that was originally pitched. This was the one that we sort of settled on. Then we were like, we can't make this many regions at once. Like it was like too impossible. So we're kind of like coming to the point where we're like, this is the size we originally wanted to reach for.
Yes. And so there's 14 new regions, bringing it up to 37 hexagon tiles. We kind of see this like a board game that you can reconfigure at the start of every war. And another side benefit is that if the frontline direction ever changes, we don't suddenly get shrunk down, which does add to the issues of queuing. If you go right now, we can span about 7 regions wide. If it flips over, it could turn to 5 or less, right? So hopefully this new world is gonna sidestep some of those issues. But the coolest part about this new world, I know we can talk about like the gameplay, the war, and all this stuff, but before I get to that, actually, it's just sort of a mock-up of the potential ways that the board game world can be set up. And I just feel like this is much less claustrophobic. Right now, Matt, it just feels so claustrophobic sometimes.
Mhm.
Like when we come up with a war configs, we're like, can we do it this way? Can we do it that way? And so many ways have, every time we try to do something new, we just start running into a problem because there's just not enough space, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to free us up to be able to do a lot. So now, hopefully getting to the cool stuff, we're finally going somewhere, Matt. Maybe you can talk about this.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, so the new maps, this was an opportunity. We really wanted to spread a little bit further out of the main country, which is Siva, is the country that it's always been. But we wanted to push south, so all of the new southern maps are canonically in quote unquote colonial territory. It is more of a Mediterranean vibe. Basically, like Mediterranean France area was kind of the inspiration for this part of the world. And we really, really wanted to push into it. We wanted you guys to feel like you're in a different place. You're in a different country. And as you go further north, it changes and changes and changes. And we also felt like the colonials, they've never really got to have any of their stuff in the game. They've never been able to have sort of an identity in the world itself. And that was something I really wanted to push for this update. If we were going to add all these maps, I wanted to really push and say, like, let's give the colonials something to kind of call their own.
Cool.
We're also going north of Siva as well, which I don't know if we show much of, but we are going. There's a few maps that are canonically in a country called Nicknevin, so there is a little bit there too. It's not quite as different as this, but just for the people who care about that.
Colonial bias there, huh? Adding, clearly the wardens don't have a single house in the game, Matt. So
we actually also, another thing that we did, Matt, I skipped over this, was that we intentionally want to add a lot more water to the game.
Yeah.
And this is in preparation for something big that I'm really excited about. That's gonna happen in about a year from now. So
yeah, it's also worth mentioning just as a disclaimer, all the stuff here is work in progress. So this map is not 100% like exactly what, like some of the land masses are a little different and stuff. But regardless, like that's basically it.
What are these?
So these are the new town bases. So one of the things we're doing in this update is we're going back to refresh a lot of the oldest things in the game, right? So the town halls that you have in the game now are probably 5 years old, or certainly 4 years old at this point. So we went back and we wanted to bring the bases in towns up to date with some of the standards we have for the other bases, like the safe houses, the bunker bases, the relic bases. So these new bases have full interiors, so you can go on the inside like the safe houses. There are AI defenses, and another big thing though on the theming side is we really wanted to have more than one type because we wanted the type of town base to feel like just another building in a town, whereas the current one feels almost too special, almost too like video gamey. We wanted to just be like, hey, there is a school in this smaller town here, and the it's just being used. It's just being used by the armies, right?
Mhm.
But it's not actually like a special like building in that regard.
We missed the chance in our preamble to say that we've taken town halls out of the game. There's no more or nothing.
But yeah, these are cool. They they have interiors. They basically function a lot more like the relic base,
or the safe houses too.
Or the safe houses.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're a lot more functional. So yeah, we have new garrison houses, as you probably guessed. In the southern regions, there are new garrison houses. Totally different style. They play totally differently. The interiors and everything, it's all totally different from the way that the ones in the north feel. To give these southern regions a little bit more of their own identity.
Cool. Let's get to the first video.